All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out. I know there is a ton of stuff going on campus this week and tonight especially, so I know you guys have to choose wisely where you're spending your time, especially with somebody told me it was still midterms week, and I just don't know how that's possible, but I'm so sorry to hear that, guys. I thought that would have been over a long time ago. So thank you for being here, and I'm going to introduce our guest and let him have the mic. So Julian Heron is a member of Christendom College's Board of Directors. He is a partner at Tuttle, Taylor & Heron, a law firm in Washington, D.C., which represents cooperatives, corporations, insurance companies, farmers, and trade associations. He has an extensive practice in the areas of administrative law and foreign trade and is admitted to practice law in Kentucky, Maryland, and the District of Columbia. He has also been admitted to practice before the Supreme Court of the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia and the Ninth Circuit, several United States District Courts, and the United States Claims Court. Heron and his wife, Kathy, live in Great Falls, Virginia. They have 5 children and 13 grandchildren and 1 great-granddaughter. He farms in Virginia, where he raises horses, Angus cattle, and field crops. I would also like to say this was cut down dramatically. This man has done a lot, and he's got a lot of wisdom to share. So please give him a round of applause.
Well, thank you very much. That's the best introduction I've had tonight. Hardly recognize myself. Now I know how the priests feel on Sunday. Everybody's in the back. There's hardly anybody up here. Ms. Stevens said I could talk to you all for about 3 hours, but I'll cut it down just a little bit and leave a little time for questions at the end. Anybody have any questions? You know, as a lawyer, you run into all sorts of different types of cases, and one that you might like hearing about, it's kind of an interesting case. This priest was coming out the interstate to Front Royal, and a state trooper pulled him over. And he rolled down his window, and the trooper came up to the window, and he said, "Father, what's that you're drinking?" And he said, "Oh, it's water." I said, "Father, it doesn't look like water." "Oh, no, it's water, officer." I said, "Well, let me see it." So doesn't smell like water. Doesn't taste like water. "You've been drinking wine, Father." He said, "Oh, he did it again." Well, this is about being Catholic in Washington. And it is possible. Maybe another title would be, can a person go to Washington and not lose their soul? And perhaps the way to start is just sort of describe the current mess in the swamp. And that's sort of a good description for Washington, if you will, because it was built on a swamp. So there's some accuracy in that comment. And working there, being there, I can assure you, I often call on Our Lady of the Swamp for help. Very important. The Washington today is unlike any time it's ever been seen before. It's really unique, not in a good way, but it's really different. You have the White House, the House of Representatives, and the Senate all controlled by the Democrats. But the House Democrats and the Senate Democrats rarely get along, and so not much is done. It's very hard to understand some of the positions the administration, meaning the president, takes. Example you may have read about, or being smart Christendom students, you probably haven't spent any time on it, and that's a good thing. But one of the president's signature bills was called Build Back Better. And it was clear that that bill could never become law. because with the evenly divided Senate being 50-50, the vice president casts the vote to break the tie. You have to have 100% of the Democrats voting yes. It's a given 100% of the Republicans would vote no, and so the vice president is the winning vote. But 2 Democrat senators said they would never vote for that. Senator Manchin of West Virginia and Senator Seema of Arizona. So there was no possibility of that bill passing. Even though the House passed it, to the Senate, and this was a $1.5 trillion bill in terms of the money that was going to pump out. And the 2 Democratic senators said no, and the president kept saying it would pass. The Democratic leader in the Senate said he was going to pass it, set many dates for passing it, Senator Schumer of New York. But ultimately it never passed because despite all the pressure from the White House and all the pressure from other Senate Democrats, Senator Manchin, Senator Seema held firm, said, no, we're not voting for this, it's a bad bill, and they won't do it. That in and of itself is unusual, that they couldn't be pressured to vote yes, but it was more unusual that the leadership, beginning with the president, going on down, kept telling the public that the bill would pass when it had absolutely no chance to pass. Things like that normally don't happen in Washington. Even though there's a lot of disagreement, it's rare the disagreement bubbles out into public sight where it's so clear it's not going to happen, and yet they're telling everybody it will happen. So that's one thing. Today, over a year into this administration, there's still many senior positions that haven't been filled, and a number of them there hadn't even been a nomination for. But of the people that have been nominated, it takes a long time, and I'll give you an example, not necessarily this position is something you would care about, but the ambassador at the president's trade office that's in charge of negotiating for agriculture was nominated over a year ago, and there's still been no date scheduled for her confirmation hearing. And that means because when she's nominated, she has to leave her job, thinking she'll have a job with the government. But now for over a year, she's been unemployed and has had to spend over $10,000 on lawyers and accountants trying to answer the Senate's questions. And finally, she just gave up and said, no, take my name away. Not doing it, I can't afford it. And there are numerous other people in that same position. So the system is not working very well. It's just in a mess, and on top of that now, as I'm sure you've read or heard about, the war in Ukraine is adding a lot more pressure, such that many of the Democrats in Congress are openly criticizing the president for not helping Ukraine. And, you know, he's made it very clear he's not going to give fighter jets to the Ukraine. Poland offered them. He's blocked it. And as one person, the minority leader in the House, a Republican, pointed out, we're giving them Stinger missiles. We're giving them all sorts of anti-aircraft defense weapons to shoot down Russian planes, which they're doing. And what's the difference between that and fighter jets? And there really isn't a lot of difference. But the casualties have been just incredible in Ukraine. Towns have been wiped out. Many Russian generals now have been killed. Supposedly over 10,000 Russian troops have been killed. And Putin is getting very frustrated. There was just an article that came out saying that his top defense minister has vanished. They're saying he had some heart problems, which probably means he's not with us anymore because he has not succeeded. And, that is a worldwide mess, because what's going on is the fight for freedom. Because if Russia prevails, it won't stop in Ukraine. There'll be other countries they'll start nibbling on. And right now, some would say we're already at war with Russia because of the cyber warfare that's going on. And that happens every day, not just from Russia, but from all over. There was, and think about this, because you all know better than me, I'm a dinosaur and proud of it, but you all are up to date. And this was about 10 years ago. A high-ranking admiral spoke to a board and explained to them that the Pentagon, now this is back 10 years ago, got attacked 10,000 times a day. And what really stuck in my mind was, he said, and most don't get through. It was that most don't get through that really makes you wonder, and just think how much more sophisticated everything is today. Hopefully the Pentagon's much more sophisticated, but another example of how this works, this was about 5 years ago. 3 friends of mine that worked in the White House, when they went to get their IRS refund, were told, no, we've already given it to you. They said, no, we haven't gotten it. No, we sent the check. It was applied for. Now, these were people working in the White House that somebody tapped in and got their tax refunds. So that just is a quick glimpse at how nefarious all this is and how constant it is at the highest levels. So it's something that, we all have to be very, very aware of. From our standpoint as Catholics, in answering the question, can a person go to Washington and maintain their soul? And the answer is yes. But we have to be alert and attentive to what some would call Beltway theology. Because, stated differently, the question is, does policy impact one's religion, or does religion impact policy? And from our standpoint, of course, we want religion to impact policy. But you see some of the primary issues of the day, abortion. We have, if you will, a Catholic president who's a big abortion advocate, as are virtually all, not 100%, but virtually all Democrats. Closely related is marriage. Look at the attack that's going on today against the family and marriage. And it's incessant, and they're very aggressive. And keep in mind that communist philosophy, communist doctrine is, if you can destroy the family and destroy the church, you don't have to go to war, because the country's going to fall on its own. And I leave it to each of you to think about how far we are down that road already, which really means that each of you has, in addition to your vocation as Catholics and your vocation as Americans, that we're in a daily fight, in a daily war to save our country. And that's where your education, your superb Catholic education here at Christendom, is preparing you, because as Catholics, we have to go out into the world. And we have to do what we can, however little or however large, to help change things and get people on the right track. Now, in the heart of Washington, you may have heard of it, there's a little center referred to as CIC, the Catholic Information Center. that's run by Opus Dei. And on any day at their noon mass, you can find some high-ranking government officials. There are faithful Catholics there. But there are also a lot of individuals that call themselves Catholics but don't act like it because of the things they support, and that generally is politically motivated. You find Catholics in Congress that support abortion, support everything that we're opposed to, but you also find Catholics in Congress that fight to preserve things that are decent and just. And very shortly, you all will be out in the general public, wherever you go, whether it's to Washington, which needs every one of you, or wherever in the country, you'll encounter this. And we'll have the opportunity through your conversation with your friends to help them and to educate them, to help them learn by observing your happiness that maybe there's something to this being Catholic. Maybe I should think about this. And gradually, bit by bit, you'll lead them in the right direction. You know, being Catholic in Washington is the same as being Catholic in Front Royal. There's no real difference in that. You know, us living in the swamp, we go to Mass daily. We say our rosaries. And the key to success in Washington and any place else you go, the key to success in life is being honest, maintaining your integrity, and then volunteering, offering to help. You know, as Catholics and Americans, we have to vote. And part of the problem today is so many people, really a lot of people, don't vote. You know, if you think about it in political terms, there's a retirement for members of the House of Representatives every 2 years. And that retirement depends on voters going and changing the ones that aren't good. In the Senate, it's every 6 years. But still, if people really took that responsibility seriously, it would make a huge, huge difference. So consider that, vote as soon as you can, and then vote in every election. And volunteer. There's so many opportunities to volunteer. You can volunteer for a candidate. You can volunteer for a political party. You can volunteer for unlimited Catholic organizations, and then your own parish. A very wise priest once said that when you do those things, God expands your time. Because as humans, our first thought is, I'm too busy. I don't have time for that. But, you know, it's almost like the Nike ad. Just do it. And you'll be amazed that the time is there. You know, so every time you have an opportunity to do anything, take it. Because first you'll be helping whatever group or organization or cause you're helping. But second, you'll learn a great deal from it. And maybe the lesson simply is, oh, I did have time. I can do these things. You know, every little bit helps, and it may not seem like it, but it really, really does. For me, being a Catholic in Washington, you wouldn't know, but I'm a Dominican, a third order Dominican, Dominican's religious order. I'm sure you're familiar with them. And under the Dominican rule, one of the things we do is wear a Dominican shield. It doesn't have to be this shield. It could be a cross. It could be anything, but some external sign of it. And it always amazes me the questions I get asked. One person once asked me, said, what's that you're wearing? And I said, well, it's the Dominican shield. I'm a third order Dominican. And he said, oh, I always thought you were an American. Had no idea. But it provides an opportunity for conversation. Another person once asked me, you know, what's that? And I explained the Dominican shield. I thought they were going to fall down. They turned to get away so fast. Didn't want to be near me. But these are little signs that you don't have to say anything, but they give rise to conversation. And just through your going through day-to-day life and the example you set, people will figure out, you know, you're Catholic because you may say, well, I've got to go to Mass now. Or, no, thank you, I would really like that glass of wine, but it's Lent. And during Lent, I don't drink wine. You know, they figure that out. There was this one congressman who knew I was Catholic, and we talked about it. I kept trying to urge him along. He was religious. He was not Catholic, but on the right side of everything. He told me one day, he said, you know, our pastor talked about maybe this year we should do like the Catholics do and give something up for Lent. And I thought, oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, what am I going to give up? Oh, my favorite is red cake. Red cake's my very favorite. I hardly ever get it. I'll give it up. He said he did. And that night, he went to dinner. He was invited to dinner, and the dessert was red cake. He said it was a big mistake. I don't know how you guys do it. So I had an uncle one year. He was not Catholic, but he gave up brushing his teeth for Lent. So there's all sorts of things. You never know. In my family, there were three of us, one brother, one sister. We were not raised Catholic, but all of us married Catholics. And so the Lord went and got us. And we're all Catholic now. But again, I just say that because that's part of being Catholic in Washington. You know, there's so many things you can do in your room, in your office. Put up a crucifix. Then almost everybody will know you're Catholic. But you don't have to say anything. But you do have to live the life. And as people see that, they get attracted and they get curious. And that gives you the opportunity to talk to them. I have a philosophy, it's not church doctrine, but it's my philosophy, that everybody's Catholic, they just don't know it yet. And so, as we go around, we meet people, we talk to people, it just gives us a chance to plant the seeds. And then it's up to the Holy Spirit to help them grow. The main thing is, in one sense, Washington, whether we think of it as a swamp or not, it is the capital of the world, of the free world. And the rest of the world looks to it anyway. There's no other place in the world like Washington because of our influence worldwide. So being there is the opportunity to have a real impact and to have the opportunity to become involved, to work with things. Right now, one of the foundations that's really flourished is the Ukraine Foundation. And it's just incredible. They're not set up to do this, but they've raised millions of dollars by people just sending it to them to try to help Ukraine. And not just money, but medical supplies, clothing, all sorts of things, and people are donating their airplanes to fly it over to Ukraine, although most of it stops in Poland and then goes across the border. But again, there's so many little things happening constantly where you can have a real impact. I know Christendom comes and it's probably somewhat frustrating, but it has a bigger impact than you can imagine at the March for Life every year. And this year, I believe, you all led the March of Life, and that was just fantastic. But what a witness it is, not just to the government, but to the whole country and to the whole world. I'm sure, well, probably some of you are, but maybe not all, are conscious of the fact that that goes worldwide. And it gives hope. It gives encouragement. Just to show you how severe things are, in Russia, this again is a few years old, but the average woman of childbearing age had 9 abortions. Now think about that. That's an average number. Absolutely incredible. There's no way to comprehend it, but it was factual. And so even if one Russian woman happens to see the parade, the March for Life, who knows what impact that has and how many babies that saved. And it's even more important, the rest of the world, because people see that they care. You know, treading into an area, maybe I shouldn't, but same area, you should know. Big deal recently about Black Lives Matter. And of course they do. And everybody's for Black Lives Matter. And absolutely not one person in Congress on the Democratic side speaks about the fact that most abortions are among black women. Those black lives didn't matter, and they don't care. So, again, it's the opportunity, just the march shows, no, we care. We're trying to save these innocent babies. So all those things are just so important. They may not seem like it. They may not seem like, you know, I'm just one person. But one person, then 2 people, then 3 people. In congressional political terms, when a member of the House, for example, is talking to one person, they don't think of that as a conversation with one person. They think of that as a conversation with at least 10 people, because that person has a wife or a husband. They may have children. They may have parents. They definitely have neighbors. So that goes out. And the same thing applies to us. We're not just talking to one person. That person is going to talk to somebody else and say, hey, did you know? So that is mentioned just to emphasize the importance of what you're able to do, what you can do, what it's hoped you will do with your education here at Christendom. The very best Catholic college in the United States, and being prejudiced, I would say in the world. But it's really important. And that's a gift that you have, and then the decision is, am I going to share that gift? And I'm certain you will. Because, well, that's a superb question, an excellent question. And in the simplest terms, and I'll expand a bit, but in the simplest terms, you simply live your Catholic life and reflect your Catholic beliefs. Now, you don't have to shove it in somebody's face. You let them see it by observation. One of the greatest sermons I ever heard, and it was actually, I learned later, a quote from St. Francis, but the whole sermon was, preach the gospel always and use words if necessary. And that's really the answer to the question. You remain a Catholic, you remain devoted, and you're surrounded by people who not only aren't Catholic, do not believe in the Catholic faith, and if you'll allow me, believe in killing babies and numerous other things, but they see you're different. And here and there, that is very attractive. And that's how you live in Babylon. Yes, sir.
First of all, thanks for coming out to the boonies.
Thank you.
And I guess this is a more specific question.
Yeah. I'm not going to predict what the court's going to do because first, I don't know. And if I gave you a prediction, don't listen to it because I don't know. But this part, I do know, without any question. At the time that decision was made, the science was not available to prove without any doubt that the baby was alive in the mother's womb. The plaintiff in that case has since recanted much of her testimony and said she was wrong, and the decision was wrong based on her position. There's a lady here in this diocese, Terry Beatley. If you look her up, she was inspired to interview Dr. Nathanson, the king of abortion. Dr. Nathanson taught Planned Parenthood how to do abortions. At one point, he was on the board of NARAL. He aborted several of his own children and really developed what is called the Catholic approach in trying to persuade, and with some degree of success, Catholics, this is perfectly all right. He eventually recanted all that, admitting he was wrong, admitting that it was horrible, resigned from NARAL, resigned from Planned Parenthood, and actually became Catholic before his death, and taught that he was wrong and made Terry promise that she would spread his story, his deceit, and explain the Catholic strategy which he invented to persuade us all that it was okay. And so if you Google Terry, I'm sure you'll find her, and you'll find a lot of information, including affidavits from the plaintiff in Roe v. Wade saying, no, this was wrong. This is not right. And what the court's going to do, again, I don't know. I know there are very smart, knowledgeable people in Washington who believe the court will overturn it. What I don't know is whether that's wishful thinking or really insightful knowledge. I know clearly there's constant prayers, and I'd ask for yours as well, that the court will overturn it. But if they do, and hopefully, prayerfully, they will do it, there's going to be a gigantic outrage across the country. And the efforts, I'm certain, in Congress will be ramped way up to make it the law, yes, you can have an abortion. If you want to kill your baby, go right ahead. It's perfectly all right. That makes this November's election critical. Because if the election was today, and of course it's not, it's next November. If it was today, there's no question, nobody disagrees, including the Democrats. The House will change and become Republican. And there's the possibility that that will also occur in the Senate. Notice I said possibility, not probability. House probability. But in political terms, from now to November is such a long time away. Who knows what will happen? And so I think I don't have a problem predicting the House becoming Republican in November. But will it really happen? Who knows? You know, God knows, but I don't. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Obviously, there are many struggles to being Catholic in D.C. Which was the one that you least expected?
That's a great question, but the answer is somewhat simple. For me, it's not really been a struggle because I don't care. I'm Catholic. If you like it, fantastic. If you don't, I don't care. Do I want to convert you? Yes. Have I personally ever converted anybody? Never. But I keep trying. You know, it's like falling off a horse. You get back on again. So you keep trying. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
What's your response to people calling you sexist, homophobic? I know Catholics get that a lot because our views are misconstrued. How do you respond to that? How do you present? Do you try to present Catholicism as it should be understood? Do you just leave it? How do you respond?
It really depends on the situation. If it's a stranger, I might not respond at all. If it's my brother, I'm going to argue. But the simplest answer, but the atmosphere has to be right. There's really no advantage to engaging in an argument. If it can be a discussion, yes. Argument, no. But the simple but accurate response is everyone, including whoever's saying that, is in the image and likeness of God. They're a child of God whether they know it or not, whether they admit it or not. They are. And so therefore, they're entitled to be treated with respect, but also honesty and integrity. And so, you know, as any general, admiral, colonel, captain, whatever, will tell you, you pick your battles. And sort of an example there, my next door neighbor, up until very recently, was a former Indiana congressman, but a Catholic, and a reasonably good Catholic. And because of that, because he was a Democrat, he would often get invited by bishops and other priests to come speak about being a Catholic Democrat, because in a generic sense, they're contradictory. And he said, you know, it was shocking to him that when he went into a room of what he thought were his friends, all Democrat colleagues, they would boo him because he was outspoken for life. And his friends would actually boo him. So in that situation, there would be no point in him saying anything because it wouldn't have an impact. He just has to live his life, preach the gospel, and use words if necessary. Yes, ma'am.
How would you respond to a Catholic politician who says he doesn't want to impose his religious beliefs on policy?
This is just my own personal reaction. That's an excuse for doing nothing. You know, we're not trying to impose our beliefs on anybody. We're fortunate as Catholics to have been educated, and you more than me, because I don't have the education you do, have been educated in the truth. We know what the truth is. We know it all starts and ends with God. And to tell somebody, to have a conversation with somebody about the truth is not imposing our religion on them or our ideals on them. What we're trying to do is save their soul. And that's a job each one of us has, to save as many souls as we can. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, thank you so much.
No, that's a superb question. And you're going to get a biased, prejudiced answer. You know, My impression of Front Royal is if I was fortunate enough, blessed enough to live here, the jackhammer wouldn't get me out of here. But there are numerous devout, Orthodox, Catholic families living in Washington, raising their children there. There are Catholic schools. Oakcrest is Opus Dei. The Heights is Opus Dei. Oakcrest for girls, Heights for boys. My simple answer is yes, it's possible because I see it. I experience it. You know, is it a majority? No. But it's clearly possible. And, you know, I just maybe a couple of examples. Justice Thomas, and pray for him, he's in the hospital right now. But a devout Catholic goes to Mass every day on the Hill. On the Senate side, there's St. Joseph right there at the Senate. On the House side, there's St. Peter's right there at the House for all the Catholics to go, because not only are some of the members Catholic, a number of staff are Catholic, and then the people living there are Catholic. So I don't think it's hard. Now, you know, to be somewhat fair, crime is very high in the district. And I would suggest they live in Virginia because they're in the Arlington diocese. And it's a lot safer. But it's still the greater Washington area. And, you know, but I have friends that live in downtown Washington on the Hill that are solid, very practical Orthodox Catholics, and they enjoy it very much. And not all of them carry a .45. Yes, sir. Right? I can't tell if it's a sir or a lady. As much as I don't like saying it, neither party is great at it. But the Republicans are far better than the Democrats. The Democrats, and I don't mean by this every single Democrat, but the overwhelming majority of political Democrats are pro-abortion, anti-marriage, anti-everything we're for. The Republicans, it varies, but most are anti-abortion and pro-life. Most are pro-family. And one of the issues, you know, within the Republican Party, I'm a Republican, is leadership's a little questionable right now. But at least for the most part, we're on the better side of things. Yes, sir.
So, what's been your most trying moment to persevere and have patience with people that have different views than what is the truth?
Really have to think about that a little bit, but what comes to mind immediately is being with one or more Democrats that I know are totally opposed to everything I believe in, that we all believe in, our faith believes in. And I'm not always very good at this, but trying to remember to pray for their guardian angel, to pray for their conversion, because, again, going back, there's no point in arguing with them because that goes no place. If the opportunity presents itself, and occasionally it does, I'll give you another specific example with the Democrat when St. John Paul was coming to Washington, and this Democrat said, but in a civil conversational tone, I don't know if I'm going to go to the Mass, he says he's Catholic, because he doesn't want me to take communion. And I don't, because of being, in simple terms, a Democrat. And I just don't know if I'm going to go. And it was possible to say to him, no, you have to go. It's the Holy Father. Whether he tells you to take communion or not, you have to go because he's the leader. And maybe he'll say something that will be helpful. But to not go would be wrong. So you could have that kind of a dialogue, which doesn't go to the heart of the issue, but at least it helps them understand that some of their friends don't agree with their views. Yes, ma'am.
Do you think that
Oh, excuse me. My apologies.
do you think, I mean, I know this question is beyond civil politics, it's also ecclesial, but do you think it would be prudent for the bishops to excommunicate Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi, or do you think that would cause more problems than it would solve?
Not being educated, not having a strong theological background, I think that's the job. And there are bishops in the country. For example, Bishop Olmsted in Phoenix. He directed his entire diocese not to give communion to the then governor and any of the other Arizona politicians who were pro-abortion. I think there's another bishop, maybe in the upper Midwest, who has also done that. And, you know, the hard thing for me is it seems like it's very easy that that's what they should do. Clear. It's not an issue. Do it. But not being in their shoes, I don't know what their prayer and the Holy Spirit is telling them. So we just have to trust they're going to do the right thing. You know, St. Catherine of Siena, this I always keep in my mind because my nature is otherwise. St. Catherine of Siena says, never criticize a priest. God will take care of it. You know, so I assume God's going to take care of the bishops. And another saying I like, particularly with my non-Catholic friends, as a way to kind of get them relaxed a little bit. With 2,000 years of bad priests, bad bishops, bad cardinals, and bad popes, we're still here, so something must be right. Yes, sir. Well, if you were to intern on the Hill, there's both St. Stephen's and St. Peter's, depending whether your House or Senate. My understanding is they're very good. But if you're in a private situation, places like CIC, Catholic Information, there's a lot of Opus Dei folks around Washington. And then, you know, there are a lot of good priests. But I've also had priests in the D.C. diocese ask me where my parish is, and at that time it was St. Catherine of Siena in Great Falls, and I would tell them that and say Arlington Diocese, in case they didn't know where that was. And the priest once or twice said, oh, you're over in the Promised Land. And And I don't think that was a compliment. But the answer is yes, it can be done. It just takes a little investigation and help and asking people, because it's there. There are good, strong Catholic communities in Washington. Yes, sir.
Did you practice law before you converted? And if you did, what's the single biggest thing that changed in how you do your job?
Well, that's a good question, and if we have another hour, I think I can try to answer it. But the simplest thing is, prior to becoming Catholic, I really didn't have any rules. And so my image of myself was that of a gunslinger. And you could surrender, or I could kill you. I didn't care which. Sort of like a Muslim, in that sense. As a Catholic, I can't do that. You know, wearing this pin, that's not just a sign to others, it's a sign to me. Hey, you're a Dominican, act like one. Be fair, be honest, be just. You're not a gunslinger anymore. You still have to work hard to win, but you're not a gunslinger. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. Oh, excuse me, I did it again. Hey, I'm not modern. I'm not switching. Although I have to admit, the other day on the golf course in a tournament, there was a woman in our foursome, and the woman tees were so far ahead that she had such an advantage. I told the guys I was with, you know, it's today. Maybe we should be women.
I was wondering, in your experience, did you ever have any interaction or principles with Catholics?
That's a really good question and a difficult one. Because, first, if we go to Russia, there's one party. It's called Putin. And he makes the decisions. That's not America. If we look at many other countries around the world, pick whatever one you want, India, Israel, any of them, they have multiple parties. And so to accomplish almost anything, there has to be, in Britain too, UK, intense negotiations between the parties to get enough of the different parties, I'll call them splinters, to come together to have a majority to accomplish anything. Based on that, it's believed the two-party system is best. Now, if the third party could eliminate the Democrats, and you had Republicans and third party, two-party system, that'd be good. But I don't think that's going to happen, just because of the nature. Both Republicans and Democrats are so entrenched, it's so hard for a third party to ever make a difference. And I'll explain one just practical reason for that. Each state, each of the 50 states, have their own set of rules as to how you get on the ballot. There's not just one way. There's 50 ways. And for somebody starting out, if you will, to run for president, it takes a tremendous amount of education just to figure out how to do it. And then it takes a tremendous amount of money to actually do it. And the person who's going to get elected gets elected because of the groundwork. And that goes back to my earlier volunteer, help out. The person best organized on the ground almost always will win. And for a third party, certainly the first time around, I won't say it's impossible because miracles happen regularly, but it's really difficult. Any other questions? Yes.
So we live kind of in a weird culture where, I guess, the concept of detraction is that it's like slander, but it's when you say something that's true, and it's kind of hard to deal with.
correct, but consider where it's coming from. It's coming from the Democrats, who for the most part don't have any religion other than their own political careers. And again, I'm not the best person because I take it as a badge of honor that she or other Catholics say, yeah, I'm Catholic. That's it. And does it influence? Yes. Would I make a decision for a Catholic against a Baptist just because of that? No. And she wouldn't do that either. But we're going to see more and more of that. And, I'll give you an example. Back when Dan Quayle was vice president, he and Marilyn were deeply religious, not Catholic, but deeply religious. And they were being interviewed one time, Dan was, and during a break, the interviewer said to Marilyn, "Oh, you've been standing, have a seat, just relax." And so she did. And the minute she sat in the chair, the interviewer signaled to the cameraman, turned on the camera, and said, "Now, Marilyn, I understand you talk to God. Is that true?" Well, for most folks, first, that was a shocking question. And second, she talks to God? But because she was deeply religious, she said, "Well, yes, that's true. I pray all the time." And that was the end of it. Any other questions? Well, I think I've worn you out. I thank you very much. The questions were wonderful. Y'all are a terrific audience, the very best one I've had tonight. So I thank you very much.